Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Verde Beach. And this is a really unique view of the downtown area. I can't stand the way it looks, and that's because it just ends. So many episodes ago, I placed these two key landmarks for the downtown area, the Majesty and Eddie Kovanago. So these two buildings are at the end of Kellerhouse. You're coming down, you get an excellent view of the ocean and the cruise ships coming in, and these really spectacular buildings. But then everything ends. It breaks down. You see fields with cars, and that's unreasonable. Rationally, this downtown would have started out fairly low rise and redeveloped over time to become more and more dense, and then buildings would have been infilled like the Eddie Kovanago. So we didn't do it that way, and that's because it's a game, so we can take some liberties. So today we're going to do a lot in this area. So I want to take a look at this entire area. My vision for the downtown is that it basically goes all the way to the end of this tile. And I want development to occur all the way up to the base of the mountain, kind of around where everything turns from light green to dark green. So we're going to fill things in here and try not to disturb the natural landscape too much and respect the topography. So functionally what that means is we're going to have two different grids. We're going to have, three. We're going to have one right here in between Kellerhouse and the railroad tracks. We're going to continue our downtown grid following the topography of the shore. And then we're going to have another grid where the college grid kind of turns and follows the topography of the mountain. But before we get into all of that, I do want to take a look at a couple of things. So one of the questions that I received in the comments was wondering about Founder Shores and the land values after adding the fishing industry. And what is interesting is the values haven't changed. So that's a game thing. Obviously, whoever lives here at the Bedford residence, their house was worth a lot. They had killer views of the water, direct access to the shore, and now they have donuts right in front of their house, and freight coming up Fisherman's Bend Way. So clearly not as nice as it was from a view standpoint. That said, there's stuff within walking distance now. So coffee shop, bowling alley, and coffee shop bowling alley. So that's something. Oh, and another bowling alley. So 3 bowling alleys. So it's really for a bowling alley lover and a couple of bookstores. 3, actually. So, that's for some people, that would really increase the land value, make it a really special place to live, a place that's like no other in Verde Beach. But one of the things that I have been noticing is that the bank balance is really fluctuating. So before we get into building the grid, I do kind of want to look at what's happening with our budget, dive into it, and figure out if there's anything that we can do. So in the overview menu, you can get an idea of what all of your expenses are and where all of your money is coming from in terms of your districts. Probably not really all that surprising. Most of our money is coming from residential districts, followed by commercial, and then our industries. That's where our income is coming from. Our expenses are coming from all over the place. But our biggest expense is education. So that is an issue in my mind. And that was because we were trying to level up the university. So let's take a look at the education tab. And you can see that we're taking in absolutely no profit and spending almost $67,000 a week on the campus. So I think we might need to change some policies. We're not going to be able to level up that campus until we have a higher population. So just burning money on a campus, in my opinion, doesn't make a ton of sense. The rest of this, we've got income. You can see that most of our residential zones, the low density ones are at level 5, the high density ones are level 4. And I've actually spot checked this, and a lot of them are 4 on the cusp of 5. So it's not that big of a deal. You got to see the same pattern for commercial. Everything's maxed out for low density, for higher density. Everything's in the middle. And industrial's kind of all over the place. Our industries, we are making money on our industries. So we have a bunch of income, a little bit of expense. I think we're in a good spot there. Another thing to look at would be our transit. Now we do have the free public transit policy, and in my opinion, you don't expect to make money from roads. So I think it's kind of laughable that in some people's minds they think, well, transit should make money or transit should break even. I'm just not of that mindset. I think that it's a mode of transportation, and if a city values moving people from point A to point B as efficiently as possible with as little wear and tear on its infrastructure as possible, incentivizing transit any way that's possible is a good thing. So that's why I had that policy on. We are making some money from our intercity services, so our harbors and our train. So that's something. And our tourism industry is surprisingly not bringing in all that much money. Our park areas, the Hamilton experience is a phenomenal experience. So we are making some money there. And even with the fires, we're making money there. And obviously, we have no tolls. That is something at some point I might look to add. That said, let's take a quick look at our university before we build out the grid in the downtown area. I do think this is a pretty quick fix. We will just get rid of universal education and turn down the number of academic staff, considering we are not going to be actually pursuing any more works at this time. And that should have a pretty significant impact on the cost of the university. So let's look at our economy once more. Apparently it's going to take a little while to actually make that money, but you can see that the expense has dropped significantly. Okay, there we go. I was looking in the wrong spot. We are making some money on the university now, and that's an offset. It's going to help us not dip below $1 million, which we were oscillating back and forth between making money and losing lots. And I'd rather make lots of money, bank some, and then take a look at ways that we can maybe implement those policies again. So anyway, without any further ado, let's think about our grid. So first, I want to talk about what's going to go in each of these areas. So I'm thinking everything east of the railroad tracks is going to be high density for some time. In this little area right here, I want to have government services and offices. So that's something that we haven't really focused on just yet. But it's going to be a challenging place to make connections, because we're not going to make a direct connection onto Kellerhouse unless we're doing it right here. I want to minimize the number of intersections that we have, and this is a way to do it. If we're going to cross Kellerhouse, we're going to do it with a pedestrian path, not with a road. And then we also need to cross the railroad track. So I'm thinking a collector road might run over here, go underground, dip below the railroad track, and then link up to what is right now Shirley Way. We're going to have a new name for that at some point. I do have a lot of names in the naming list, and I think I'm going to have a detailing episode soon where I implement some of those names and do some detailing, but today we're not going to worry about that all that much. We are going to urbanize this road. This will become an arterial that will lead all the way out of town, but right now, or maybe a collector. I'm not 100% sure just yet. This, as a highway, would be an arterial, but I don't know that it's necessarily warranted. So I'll have to give that some thought. And we're probably going to end at Shirley in terms of our development there. Over here, we're probably going to have some mid-rise development along the rail corridor and then low density as we step back. I am thinking that it might be nice to have the Central Park asset here, but I do want to take a look at our topography. You see that there's a spot right here that might be big enough to fit that asset. So if I could get a straight road right here, so we'll deviate from our grid that will kind of follow along the topography to have the Central Park asset here. I think that's going to be a nice amenity. because I don't want to have all that many small parks in this area. I'd like to have big parks and some of the unique assets and start really making this downtown a unique place. Right now, it's a bunch of vanilla buildings stacked side by side with some parks and some trails. Let's jazz it up a bit. So one of the things that you might critique about what I'm going to do is that so I'm going to create this massive road layout and then fill it in, and I'm going to break the grid up after the fact to place unique buildings. So is that at all realistic? No, I will readily admit that it's not. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to emulate what redevelopment would look like over time. So you have that tight roadway grid, and then you break it up with unique buildings. So we will get to that in a moment. But for the time being, I'm going to work on building out these grids. Okay, so the first place I want to look is I want to get my underpass started, because that's going to be the connection point that we need to reach. So I know that it's going to be a little bit longer on this side, just slightly, because the topography changes. So now I need to link these roads up. Okay, so this is going to be the government district, and what I've tried to do is just basically create a pretty tight grid that we could use in this area to place those buildings. Now we'll need to break this up, inevitably, but it's a nice starting point. So I do want to make some pedestrian connections before I forget. Now that we have those pedestrian connections, I want to place some fences. Now the primary reason for this is I don't want zoning to occur on Kellerhouse under any circumstances. I'm using this as a highway, and we're gonna maintain that. So I'm gonna follow this kind of tan line. And I didn't need a fence there. I just put it there for continuity's sake. It just made me feel better about this opening. Maybe it shouldn't have. I also think I'm going to place a fence along this rail corridor within this area. I don't... this is for safety. The last thing we want are people to be walking behind these buildings or in close proximity and coming right up to the train. This is going to be a very dense, very busy area. We want it to be safe. And we're never going to zone along Kellerhouse, so I figure I might as well just finish up the fencing there. So that's what I did. So, all right, we're good here. Now, I think I'm going to continue building out the grid a bit on this side, and then we'll start filling things in a little bit. So over here, I want to make sure that I'm mirroring what I was doing before. So I am going to use the freeform road tool, because Ocean Avenue has been following the coast. And now that I think about it, I'm going to name this Vine Street. This is a little ode to LA. Now we have the intersection of Vine and Sunset. So I like that a lot. And let's go ahead. I'm going to make this a collector. So one of the things that is absolutely killing me right now from an OCD standpoint is that we can't extend our road along the coast because we don't own this tile. So we are going to work on that by increasing the population, which will also solve our problem over here with not enough workers. So we will get to that once we get filling this in. So knowing that this was 12 tiles away from the collector, I decided just to make a connection right here. This one isn't going to be permanent, but it helped act as a guideline. So very helpful there. All right, so now we need to start focusing on this grid. And I think I'm going to start from Vine when creating that grid. And I want to use the same 12 by 15 grid that we have been using. So I will do that now. Where I can. Because it's clearly not going to work everywhere. I wanted to do it right here. And here it says, nah, you can't do that. That node's in the wrong spot. So we deviate. We have an interesting place, an interesting road. So I wanted these roads to mirror one another, I wanted the two roads that front Sunset to mirror Sunset, but I'm going to deviate from that immediately. And now we're going to go into a more traditional grid, coming back here, so things will begin to tighten up. Now I have inadvertently been using the roads with trees. I don't want to do that just yet. I want to think about, in a little bit more of a robust way, what these roads should look like. And I'm certainly not putting the thought into that just now. So I have extended out this collector. And for that, I do know that I want to have nicer tree-lined streets. We've kind of done that in this entire area. So might as well maintain that. The other thing that we could do is upgrade that to be a bike lane road. And that would be a good option as well. But I'm fine with this. For the time being, anyway. Okay, so you can tell I'm being fairly rigid with this grid. I'm not breaking it up all that much. I kind of had to break it up here just by the nature of the road coming in. But right away, we get right back to it. Now, you'll see this happen in older community, or I guess older Midwestern or some Western cities in the U.S. where there's a grid, it deviates every now and then, but they were pretty structured with the exception of a couple roads. So we could have changed the orientation of the grid here, but we are going to work that right into our grid pattern. So we are going to stick to it. All right. It's going to work really well. Now, you might look at this and say, wow, there's some wasted land. Well, I look at that and I think there's an opportunity for a unique building in that location. So we do have things fairly well laid out on a significant chunk of land, so might as well get going with our utilities and getting this area zoned. So let's do that now. All right. I like that. That's good. I'm probably the only player who, after dropping down water lines, inspects his or her work and goes, you know what? That is great. But I take satisfaction with the water lines. To me, it's a core mechanic of the game, and I think it's kind of fun. So, yeah, sometimes you have to make your own fun. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so now let's think about the zoning in this area. And this pedestrian path drives me nuts. I want to see if I can fix that at all before I get to that. You know, that's not perfect, but that's a heck of a lot better. So I will take that and run with it. Love it. One thing I don't love, Sunset Street. So we have a Sunset. Oh, that's Sterling. So I said I wasn't going to play with road naming all that much right now, but I am going to play with it a little bit. Oh, wow. Vine goes a long ways now. Lewis came back. We'll leave it as Lewis Bridge. I like that. That's fine. The Lewis Memorial Bridge. All right. So now we've got some weird stuff happening here with naming. Do you think, why don't we just extend Bass all the way over here to Vine, and we will deal with the rest of it later. We do need to fix our junctions, so let's do that now. And this will now be signalized at this intersection, because that will be a significant corridor. Take Vine, we'll make that a priority road, and we'll play with the junctions. So I am concerned about what's happening on Vine. I have a habit of inadvertently adding stop signs when I mess with prioritization, so we are going to take a look at that. And the stop signs always end up in a roundabout or on the highway. And so knowing that, let's see, we have a stop sign there, stop sign there. Okay. Nothing weird happening. It's interesting. It's interesting that I decided, now that I'm thinking about this, I decided that this warranted being signalized, but this other one didn't. I think that they're both the same and they don't really need it. So we will just make that stop control. Okay, back. Whoa. Back to our downtown area. So before I zone, because I talked about zoning, I wanted to think about some of these unique buildings that we're going to place in here. So a lot of these I want to get placed today. So I think what we're going to start out with is, I think it's always logical to start out with some of your plazas. So why don't we take the Statue of Wealth and put that right here along this collector. People driving through and they see, you know what, we're Verde Beach. We are very wealthy. There is our guy with his quarter. I don't know that really denotes wealth to me. Is that a penny? Let's see. Or is it a dime? Quarter. 2 quarters. 1 quarter's big and the other one's small. Okay. Well, he's worth 50 cents. So I think that this is the 50 cent memorial statue. Because, you know, what else would you call it? So we've got that. Let's look at some of our other buildings. And I'll click into the wrong menu repeatedly. So I've been meaning to place this arch. I think that the most logical location for it would be on Kellerhouse, kind of as an entryway into the city. And I'll destroy part of that fence I just placed down. I think this is going to have electricity from the university, so we're good there. It doesn't need water, so we're good. So we'll make sure that there is no... Yeah, that's nice. So you come into the roundabout and you see this wonderful arch over Kellerhouse. Wonderful. So we have a whole bunch of these office buildings, and that's what I think would make a lot of sense in this government services area. We do also have some of the buildings that come with the vanilla game that would be nice to place as well. So the oppression office is obviously a nice one. Some of the other buildings we don't have access to because we haven't unlocked them yet. So one of them that I'm looking for right now that I know we haven't unlocked, the courthouse. We need to have a really high crime rate. So we're going to have to do something with our city. Another thing is the oppression office. We need a water treatment, or the tax office, sorry. We need a water treatment plant. You know what? We're going to unlock this building real quick. 3 instances of pumping station. We need insane electricity production. And now we have the tax office. And we can demolish all these. Good thing that we got our budget in line, because that would it's a lot of wasted money right there. So not the most realistic thing to do there, but I really wanted to do it. So let's start thinking about the layout of these buildings. So generally, you're going to want to have some sort of presence to these buildings and a plaza with them. There are a lot of employees in these buildings. So this building, my guess is it would have somewhere around 300 employees. In reality, so in the game, 25. But that said, they're going to want a place to eat lunch and things like that. So we'll need to take care of that. I want in close proximity to have that tax office. And then we'll look at some of these other unique buildings and have those in close proximity as well. So these sorts of buildings, I think, are, fairly typical government type buildings. And they would all be in close proximity to one another. Now, we do have some other taller buildings, some other taller office buildings. So this is going to be an office area with maybe a little bit of commercial so people could walk and get a bite to eat for lunch. Generally, I think you would have those on the first floor, but since we can't do mixed use, we'll have we can't do vertical mixed use. We'll have to do some horizontal mixed use. So that is the way that we're going to approach that. And I think we'll have a couple smaller towers that we can fit in here. And I think that might be it, because these other towers are a little bit too large unless we break up the grid, which would make some sense too, now that I think about that. I'm going back on what I said. I think that we'll leave this being the tallest building in this area. We'll focus that density along the coast and have a nice, really high density coast area. This will be dense, don't get me wrong, but I don't want it to have many buildings that define the skyline. This is a government area. That's what defines this area. Okay, so what I'm doing here is adding a little bit of definition to the area. And the way that I'm doing that is pedestrian paths. I'm going to add a little bit of fencing here. This will look familiar if you've seen some of my other series. I want to block the zoning here and define the space. I think that one of the things you notice with government facilities is that they want to give a presence to them. The architecture that's used, I mean, it's Greek architecture. Often, you get the columns or the, in this case, it's not really Greek, although you do have elements of Greek architecture. It gives it a sense of, I guess, legitimacy. So we're going to really frame this up. This, I'm looking at this as the city hall, and some of these other buildings as federal buildings. So I know it says city office building. This could be, maybe this is the county building. We do want to have a courthouse in here at some point, but we need to have really high crime to get there. I would also expect to see a police department in close proximity, or a police headquarters rather, and a fire headquarters as well. Especially, this is Verde Beach. everything's burning down. So obviously we need that. And then landscaping as well, obviously. Now this is a tropical place, so we will use some tropical landscaping. So what would make this building feel more friendly other than palm trees? I can't think of anything. So we're going to place that around the outside, and then we will kind of leave it there. I think I might place a couple benches. That is not even on the two sides, and that's going to drive me crazy. So I will fix that. Okay, so I just wanted to add a couple of details in by this building. to make it kind of a place that people might want to spend a little bit more time at. So the other thing I'm thinking is it might be nice to have a couple of shade trees. Let's go with some smaller shade trees. We'll place those close to a couple benches, give people a place to catch some shade if they'd prefer to do that. So lots of places for people to sit, have lunch, take in the sights, and all of these buildings could walk to this plaza, theoretically, to take in the sights or have some lunch. So, okay, so I think I'm going to do a little bit less landscaping and detailing in other areas, but I am going to do some. You can see these buildings are already attracting a lot of people, so it's pretty awesome in my humble opinion. I just want to kind of thumb through here to see what else we have available to us. I don't want to miss anything that might fit in well in this area. So I think the Fountain of Life or Death might be a nice addition to this area. There's only a couple things certain in life, and that's death and taxes. So one at the Fountain of Life and Death. So then we have the Brandenburg Gate, which, you know, you always want to give these buildings that, you know, have a really special significance for places their fair due in the game. It's certainly a challenge. We're not going to find as special a place as currently exists. So that said, I think people might be a little disappointed with where I put this. I do want it to take up an entire block, rightly or wrongly. And as a result, I am going to place it right off Greenaway Street, another Greenaway Street. But I do like the architecture again. I think it gives this sense of government. And that's what I'm looking for in this area. Okay, so with that, let's finish up our paths in this area and then get zoning. All right, I think we're in a good spot. Let's get this going. Now, the one weird thing is we don't really have any demand for this type of industry district. So we are going to be planning for things that aren't necessarily needed. Ooh, that is ugly. I cannot stand that. But what I can do is hide it with landscaping. So we're going to do that. And I apologize. I know sometimes I can have the attention span of a cat and get stuck on detailing things that don't matter. But it just, for me, I get a lot of personal satisfaction from not seeing that. So I've got to do it. All right, next, we're going to, I missed the path right here. Miss any more? No, I think we're good. So for the rest of this, we're going to fill in most of this. I think we're going to lead in with commercial and then have mostly offices. So the thought being, the traffic is going to be forced to come here. This wouldn't be the most ideal location for commercial, but it'll work. And ideally, you'd have it flanking this collector, Bass Street, but I really want to maintain the offices in this area, so I think we're just going to keep that. Nothing's going to go on the outside of Julie Street. We're going to reserve that for trees. And that is our zoning in this area. So the rest of this will be filled in with landscaping, and I'm going to do some of that now. Okay, so by adding all this landscaping, we are absolutely making certain that this area is going to be lit in the future. And, oh, okay, well, we're back. I'm sure that someone saw this as I was putzing around with buildings over there, but I certainly didn't. Let's get this fixed. All right, well, it's Verde Beach. That happens. You can see we've got a fire over here. Let's admire. We could really use some landscaping back here, truthfully. Probably not the best time to do it. Part of me just wants to demolish these buildings to make sure the fire doesn't spread. Ooh, look at that. Verde Beach Fire Department in action, saving that building. All right, so I think we're good now. So I want to start again focusing on this other area over here. So again, I want to place some special buildings. So I've been waiting to place the Oriental Pearl Tower. I think this is a really, really, really super cool building that will frame the skyline. And I want it to be one of those things that catches your eye as you're coming in on the ship. So, thinking I might place that right next to the fish market. And we're going to have to do some more work with topography to make this fit in. Now that we have it fitting in a little bit better, why not have some pads around it too? I like that. I like that. Someday that's going to really pop. It's going to be something that is really eye-catching, particularly at night. So I am going to hold off from landscaping the other side of this because I'm not sure what I'm going to do over here yet, but there's going to be something, maybe? So might as well hold off for the time being. Now, there are some of these other larger towers, and I said I wanted to work in a place for them, and I do want to do that. And I want to fit it into some of these blocks that we already have that are a little bit abnormal. And you'll kind of have these bigger towers rising up, filling in the first few blocks of this downtown area, and I think it's going to look really spectacular once we get it all filled in. So some of the other taller buildings that we could work into this area, we have this church. I'm thinking that we might actually place this mega church somewhere out on the periphery. The high interest tower, we'll do something very similar. I'm going to keep this loading on the local road, not the collector, just to make sure that the traffic is dispersed a little bit more. And then this might be a unique way. We can't do it because we don't have that time. All right, so I think that maybe at the corner of Sunset and Vine, I'll place this pyramid to again give another really unique vista. So we do have the Expo Center, the Science Center, and the Aquarium. And I think that for the Aquarium and the Science Center, I want those closer to the university. So I might work these in over here and provide some sort of pedestrian connection to the denser parts of the area. So the thought here would be that these are university-supported buildings. We're not respecting the topography, you can tell. We are totally going rogue, but we're going to rely on the roads to fix the topography for us, which is a fool's errand. So we will have to do some earthwork ourselves. So some significant grading there, but the result is that this Science Center and Aquarium will fit in much nicer. I like those side by side because I think that there's a lot of synergy between those sorts of sorts of uses. So those sorts of, I guess, amenities. I think you could see there being a day pass between the two, so why not have them in close proximity? All right, so we're going to leave that for now. Head back downtown. So the Expo Center, you could see that being very close to an airport, or at least on a metro or a monorail line or something like that, in close proximity. Same with some of these other uses. So I might hold off on placing some of those. I'm looking for the absolute tallest buildings now to place, and I think I've got most of them at this point, with the exception of this one, which is another really striking building, probably the tallest or second tallest in the building, or in the city. And I want that to be another striking one that you would see. That's clearly the tallest building in the city. This being which is taller. This isn't a building, it'd be a structure, but it's still not as tall as this particular building right here. So very nice. I think that's about all that we have for our tall buildings. We do have this temple. It's very small. And in fact, I think this would fit in really nicely in the university, near the panda enclosure, or in close proximity, maybe across the way. But we're already developed out in this area, which stinks. I think I might work this in anyway. Yeah, that's great. So I could also imagine seeing this in a park. But let's say it's an operating temple. So we're back over here. And what I want to do is focus on our districts. We're going to create a district for this area. We're going to maintain the very high density buildings, basically in this entire area. And we will need a district name for this. I do have some in my naming list, but if you have some good ones and you think that you haven't given it to me yet, feel free to drop that in the comments. I'm going to create a district for this government center as well. We'll come up with something better than Verde Beach Government Center, but for the time being, there we are. All right, so next, we need to think about the core services that we want to have in this area. So, I guess a little bit of insight into what I'm thinking in the future. So I'm really thinking that I'm going to build an airport on an artificial island out in this area in the future. So I'm going to want a subway line that goes out there. So I do want to get a subway connection in this area, but I do want it to go straight down Ocean Avenue. So if we're going to come up at all, we're going to have a spur, which I know is very controversial. There have been a number of comments saying that people don't love my spurs. I get it, but we're going with it. So sorry. So I think we are going to do that here. We don't necessarily need one in this area because we have that connection over here. It'd be really great to get a pedestrian crossing in this area. It would have been really great to get that before all these buildings developed. But we didn't. So we're going to have to just figure it out after the fact. In fact, let's do that right now, real quick. Oh, this is going to be a real struggle, I can tell already. So we are going to have to use some eminent domain to get this to work, unfortunately. Significant amounts of eminent domain. Potentially unrealistic amounts of eminent domain. But this is an important enough connection that I am going to do it. That is brutal. brutal. That is not good enough. We can't leave it like that. So this is ugly, but it's going to work. It is a kind of a hike, but we have to suffer with what we have. This is such an important connection. I am willing to call a mulligan on all of that. Oh, that's so ugly. Can't do it. Gotta fix it. Mulligan on a mulligan. And you shouldn't have developed that building so quickly because I'm taking it out. And now we've destroyed our fence, and this guy's decided to sneak in and build his building. Joke's on you. That was a terrible idea. I am taking your home. Or not home, business. Sorry. All right, so I'm feeling good right now. And it's not the eminent domain that's making me feel good. I feel bad about that. But I think that when you look at all the pedestrians crossing this, you see what a vital connection that was that we made. And we're providing transit access to this entire government complex. And there's so many PEDs there, and we're not going to rework any of our other transit systems for the time being. So having this is critical. So let's get back to focusing on the subway line. So this won't do much right now, but it's going to be very, very helpful in the future. And now I think we are going to add some paths through here. And then after that, we'll finally get zoning. Well, I think I'm lying there too. We're going to need to place some essential city services in this area. Before we do that, I'm trying to be as holistic with my thought process with this as I can be, which means that even though it's going to be super gratifying to watch all of these buildings spring into place, you've got to be patient. And I'm really excited to see where our population goes. We've actually lost population since this episode started, even though we've gained a lot of buildings and a lot of acreage in our city. And again, I made a bad decision regarding path connections. So I think this is another critical path connection. I did not provide it, so we're going to provide it now. And that means eminent domain in the government services area. But that's so incredibly important. There's really not... So these railroad tracks are a really significant barrier. So making sure we have those targeted pedestrian connections is that much more important because of that. We do have a fence here blocking our sidewalk connection. So we'll break that, add that connection, and add our fences back. All right, so we have a little bit of a situation here, and I want to see where all of these trains are coming from. So passenger train, passenger train, passenger train. Yeah. I've made a bit of an issue here. So I think I need to take a quick beat here. And let's connect up this train line. If I'm here, I can't leave this broken. So I know that this is a line that only makes connections to the external area. So we'll just connect up that track there. It looks a little better anyway. And now there's enough distance that hopefully those trains won't get stuck. Truthfully, we could probably tighten this up a little bit. I'm going to. I think that's a nicer connection. And we've gained a little bit of land. Not that it's useful land, but we've gained land. All right, so city services. We are going to need schools over here, probably a number of schools, because this is going to be 100% high density development in this area. So we're going to place, I'm guessing we'll do 4 schools at this point, and maybe 1 or 2 high schools. And I kind of just, at this point, just want them to be spread out around the area, not on collectors or arterials, but in close proximity to them. Wow, our university capacity is low. Are we getting enrollment over at our main university? No. Great. I don't know what the deal is over here. We'll need to dig into that a little bit more at some point in the future. All right. Well, for the time being, I think we're in a spot where we can start our zoning. Actually, we're not. we need healthcare and death care. So, I think I'm just going to have maybe one major hospital in this area and then a couple of clinics. Again, this is going to be a very dense area. And then we're going to, of course, need to overdo it with crematoriums because you just have to. I don't take any great pride in that, but it is reality. And if we don't overdo it, we will end up with a huge death care problem. This is a great spot. I know that it's close to the hospital. It's a little bit morbid, but it is an excellent location in terms of its proximity to the road. So we also don't have any child or elder care in this entire area. I might hold off on that for the time being and place that in another location. Community pool would be something else I might expect to see in an area like this, because you don't have a lot of other recreational activities available to you. Boy, that's terrible on that slope, though. Totally not respecting the topography. Any better there? Nope. I think it's flat up here, though, so that's a great location. All right, so what I'm going to do here, we're going to have high-density commercial along the collectors and some offices near the unique buildings, and then residential basically everywhere else. So I probably should be a little bit more thoughtful about where these roads are going to come out in the future. There will be some destruction, which is unfortunate, but not the end of the world. So I know it's kind of controversial for me to include these little tiny zoning districts near the downtown. I could leave those and put in trees or asphalt or whatever. Personally, this land is so valuable. I think you'd see people trying to throw whatever they can in this area to make some money. So that's why I am zoning. That's great. And now it's time for a large swath of residential. We are going to have some residential along the coast. We're going to leave that beach empty, though. Not quite sure what we're going to do here yet, but it's not going to be residential housing. And I guess all housing is residential, so I'm not sure why I said residential housing. Shoot. So I inadvertently zoned along the train here. I absolutely don't want to do that. Same thing over here. I need to be a little bit more careful than I was being. That's why I like to use fences, because I like filling this in quickly. And now let's watch it fill in a little bit. So I realized I had myself muted, and I wanted to put a couple policies in place. First, the high-rise ban was in place here. I disabled that so that we can get some higher-rise buildings here. And then I wanted the high-tech housing policy as well to increase the land value in this area. I also implemented the lightning rod policy for the entire city so that we don't have stuff like this happening again when we have a thunderstorm. So Probably should go through all of the policies at some point, but for the time being, this will do, and we will continue to watch the university burn while the downtown develops. Okay, so I'm incredibly pleased with how this is filling in. We're gaining some population. We might crack 50,000 before the episode ends. But I do want to place some landscaping along Kellerhouse to make this feel a little bit more intimate than it does right now. Right now, it's just kind of a bunch of big buildings near nothing. So the other benefit, I talk about this a lot, having all this landscaping will provide some sound deafening in this area. Routinely, landscaping is used as a sound buffer between either roads or noxious uses and residential uses. That's generally the purpose. It's really protecting those residential uses. It bugs people. It's not going to make them sick like it does in the game. I mean, I guess sometimes you'll hear that someone says that they're sick because of a windmill or something like that. I don't know. I'm not going to say that that is a thing or isn't a thing, because I don't really know enough to be fully educated on that. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to spout off a bunch of opinions about something I haven't adequately researched. That's certainly a thing that I have not adequately researched. It hasn't been an issue, I guess, in any community I've worked in. That said, I do know that, sound is disturbing to people. So is light, and trees and foliage prevents both of those things from being an issue. So it's often used, it's often requested. When residents have a problem with projects, I'll tell you what, a great way to reassure them that you're serious as a developer about meeting their needs and resolving their concerns. That's giving them a couple trees. Just saying, hey, we'll come into your yard and plant a couple trees. That can be all that it takes. That can be the difference between getting a project approved or not. All right, there's certainly more landscaping that we could do, but those are really the core areas that I'm concerned about right now. That and this terrible hillside thing going on. And I'll hold off on the rest of this until we have a detailing episode, which I think is going to come soon. And I'm saying that I'm going to hold off as I'm planting a whole bunch of stuff. That's who I am at this point. If you've been watching for a little while, you probably know that. And if you are just watching this episode for the first time, you might see that this is just kind of my thing. I go off and just keep doing stuff, even though I say that I'm done, and I promise that I'll move on to something else. And here I am, still adding bushes, because I like it. Man, this feels a little bit tropico to me. It feels like this is El Presidente's statue to himself. And this is a very steep tunnel, but we're going to roll with it because it's built. And to fix it at this point, I'm afraid of what I would break. That said, I probably should have gone a little bit less on the depth there. So we're at a spot now where I kind of just want to take an inventory of where we're at. Let's take a look at our traffic flow. We're good. Let's get out of this view. The traffic is good. It's flowing okay in this area. I don't know that I modified the signals here. I did. So the fact that this is operating well with all this new density and all these people moving in, I think bodes well for it in the future. This area is just a mess. We're going to have to do something about that. I think we're still having bus problems. And you see that there are lots of hot spots, but no real breakages. except where we've used transit too much. So we're okay for the most part. We certainly need to look at some of these lines and modify them. That's probably a future episode, optimizing the transit network and really building out some of the infrastructure that we have. But I'm pretty pleased with where we are at from a transportation standpoint. 82% when we're approaching 50,000 and rapidly growing is pretty good. Now I am noticing that our garbage processing is breaking down a little bit, and I might add another transfer facility. I really should have added this before I built all these buildings. Ideal location, probably near the train tracks. At this point, I really need it, but I don't know that I'm going to add it right now. I am going to get water to the Science Center, though. So we definitely need some sort of waste processing complex in this area. It makes me wonder if garbage is part of the reason that we're having some of the issues that we're having with fires. We're certainly on the edge. Well, that's going to be a problem for a future episode. Let's take a look at everything else. We got a lot of dead people, but not an overwhelming amount. Over here in our factory district, things are looking up. The new residents are taking jobs, so that's good. And from an education standpoint, our university, this is absolutely wild to me. This makes me wonder if we just need some transit connections. One of the things someone mentioned in the comments of one of my videos was that you could change the purpose of the bus depots. Now, I've never heard of that. I'm very, very, very curious. So the thought was that you could take a bus depot and make it a school bus depot. I'd never heard of that. I didn't know that school buses were implemented in the game, or I guess if they have been, I haven't used them. So that was curious to me. If anyone knows anything about that, though, definitely leave me a note in the comments. And I know that I need more fire protection, significantly more fire protection. We will work on that. I am very unsure about where I'm going to place those facilities at this point. I guess I could probably place one over here. That might be a good place for it, but that's a future episode. We're going to probably place some fire breaks as well. But for today, I'm pretty pleased with where we've left off. Let's take a look at our new transit stops. Got some utilization. Yeah, 228 here. Doesn't seem right. It's packed to the brim with people, but I guess it must be emptying out quickly. All those people are coming down here to our train station, which is just getting mobbed with people. So we're in a good spot. So that said, I think I'm going to leave this here. I'm very pleased with the way this build is turning out, with the exception of trash collection. We will remedy that in a future episode. But the downtown area is filling in. I do want to know when we hit that next milestone, 60,000. That's when we'll get to buy this tile and continue out that way, because this kills me. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider hitting the like button. If you are not subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. And if you want to be notified when I release new videos, hit that notification bell. I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. You can see their names listed here. You guys are helping me do everything that I am doing, and I appreciate you. And I am going to leave you with a brief city tour. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.